Welcome everyone. So today we got so many new things going on. The intro will be new and we're talking about this new framework over here again. And if you didn't watch the first part where I explained how to set up your first application, just up there in the corner, I will add a link to that. And today we are going to talk about component configs and the documentation. So without further ado, let's start. That was the new intro. I hope you like it. First things first, if you like what you see, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. So I'm regularly posting new videos, and therefore it would be great if you subscribe so that you get all the news. So as you can see, I already prepared everything for today. I would like to open the documentation now so that you can see what I'm talking about here. So if you open the documentation, there are so many different things, and it's probably for a beginner hard to understand what's what. So what I did, I started here base functionality, which is basically advanced stuff. Most likely in the beginning, you will never ever have anything to do with that. So this is like core and main and worker. So in the beginning, don't even care about these things. Then we get the dev building blocks. I named them dev building blocks because this is what you will work with day in, day out. And the first thing is layout. Layout in here comes with different layout types. All the last three are Flexbox designs. So if you're familiar with CSS and Flexbox, the parent knows this is what I have, and the children, based on their flex value, will get the space. HBox is taking ordering all the children next to each other, beside, and VBox is underneath each other. How to use that, I will show that in a bit. Fit is basically whatever space the parent has is available for the children. And card layout is that you have one card at a time will be shown, but there may be different cards next to each other, and you can choose which card should be available at the point. That's basically the different layout types. Next is the vDom layer. In here, we do have vDom. I will get a bit into that today, and we will talk about it over and over again, so that over the time you will fully understand what vDom really is and means. Then we do have the component layer. The component layer consists of components and containers. The container has other components inside, and the components, let's just open here. I prepared something, move it to the right, this one to the left. So you can see in here on the left side, I defined component, and on the left side, container. So right side, component, left side, container. So whenever you see items inside, this means you have to use some kind of a container. And if you have a vDom inside, which describes a tag and the inner HTML or children, we'll get into that a bit later. So whenever you see vDom, it has to be a component. Whenever you see items, it has to be a container. So here you see items, which means it has to be a container, and it's a tab container. And if you remember that we were just talking about a layout card type, that is exactly what the tab container is doing. If you have up here tabs you always want to have in here a card layout. So in my second card is the content of tab 2, and in my first card is the content of tab 1. So that's why tab container is a container and comes with items. The tab button config only describes how the tab up here should look like, but the container itself is down here. Then we do have ViewController and ViewModel. These are the ViewController and the ViewModel. And what the controller is doing is that as soon as the user of your website clicks somewhere, you want something to happen. And at that point, you have to run some logic. And that's what is being happening inside the controller. The data or ViewModel. Today, most of the websites are data-driven, so you get a lot of data and you somehow have to display them, change them, send them back to the server, receive new data, stuff like that. But basically, everything is data-driven. And to ease that, you use a ViewModel. You work a lot with data. Maybe that you define the data so that you always have a string should be a string, a number, so that you always know, okay, I have to send back these data as a string, as a number. And so that's what you use a model for. A filter, if you get tons of information and you want to show only a number of items to the user, you filter them, and a sorter to bring them into the correct order. But basically everything in here is about components and things that you use on a regular basis. Let's go back for the documentations. So in here we do have button, calendar, component, container. Here's a controller with a view controller. Here is the dashboard, dialog. All these things are basically the items you work with on a daily basis because those are the components, the building blocks of what you want to show to the user. But then sometimes you need a bit more help, like drag and drop or some util function to format a string and all these things. I named these supporters. So these are my supporters for me when I work with Neo on a daily basis. Then the next question is how? What the method is you can use with Neo. And the answer is you can choose a bit yourself. From, I believe it was Google, they have a model view whatsoever. Others talk about model view controller. We already talked about the view is what the user sees. The model are the data you use to show them. The controller is if the user does something, you want to react to it, that's the controller, MVC. Or you have, in more modern ways, model view, view model. And all these things are just names. Just let's start coding and we'll dive into it. And I guess you will understand over the time how I prefer to code with Neo. Let's try to create our own component. So let me get rid of this, open my main view, and let's take a look what I prepared for you here. So, as you already saw in my tab container, on the first tab, I created a new button type. And this button type, if I click here, it just counts up, but this is just the logic from what happens if I click. What I want to show is how can we get from the standard button to a badged button. And therefore I created a badge button which has an iconCls of inbox. And I already explained the last thing that during the creation process of your application, you can choose style sheet to include that, which comes with the latest Font Awesome version. And if you can use Font Awesome, it will look like this. So I just typed in email and I came up with, what am I using? Inbox. So inbox. So if I click here, you can sort by free, because this is the free version of Font Awesome. And I'm using the inbox, and in here you see far minus solid, far minus inbox. And that's why I added in here far minus inbox. Then I would like to add what to display inside the badge. And the handler comes from, if we take a look in the documentation and we look into the button base, then you can see on this side handler. So the handler says shortcut for DOM listeners click and the function. For that, you can either go with what I'm doing in here, or the next time we will talk about ViewController, you can just add a string and use the functionality in the controller. For now, what we want to do is get, at the point when this handler is running, this is the badge button. Let me just add here a debugger and let's run the code. So, running it, we click it. Here we can see we are inside the debug, and now I just click this. And you right away see badge button. So I can see that this is my badge button. And what I'm doing in here now is that I'm saying increase the number of badge by 1. And if the badge afterwards says 10, then reset it to null. Let's try. Rerun this so that we get rid of the debugger. 6, 7, 8, 9, null. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So this is my functionality, which just runs on click, and I increase the badge number by 1, and that's it. Now, how do we get the badge inside our button? If we take a look here, there is nothing like badge. Bind, so badge should have been above that. There's no badge config inside. Let's take a look at how I implemented it. If you want to create an item that you want to use throughout all applications, you can create a new item. And that's what I did. Instead of adding it to my include folder, I went to the source folder and wait, source. There is in the node modules, if I'm searching here for Neo.MJS, there is a source folder, and in here are all the items that you just saw in here. So this is our source folder from Neo. And then comes button, component, container, stuff like that. So if I want to add a new item which is available for all my applications, I can go for, let me just scroll up again. I can go for the source folder. Right inside my new workspace, I have the source folder. And in there I created a folder button. And in there I created a file badge. Let me open that up. So we have this button, new button badge class. I named it badge button. It extends the base button. So from new button base. I added an example so that everyone afterwards fully understands how to use it. And then we can, let me just close these. So, and then make sure that you always add a lot of information to others working with your code afterwards. So I added in here badge with an underscore. Whenever you add to the config an item without an underscore, then you create at the same time a getter and setter for that item. And if you add the same config with an underscore, you will create instantly a beforeGet badge, a beforeSet badge, and you will create an afterSet badge. So what are these three for? Again, I get these out of the box without doing anything if I create a config inside my static config part with the underscore. And I get a getter and setter. So let me just go for the getter and setter first. Inside here, I can go, the value is the new value that was just added for the badge, and the old value. So if I say this, remember this is my badge, this dot badge equals 5, then this means this is the standard way to write things in Neo. And this is the setter. So whenever you say this badge equals, it actually means this set badge. And if you say let badge equal to this badge, then this actually means this get badge. So if I would say this get badge, automatically this function beforeGetBadge will be launched. So this is basically to return, let's say you always want to make sure that this is a money thing. So you could say return dollar plus value. So if someone says, get me the badge by saying this badge, I would receive in for this here the dollar plus the current badge number. And again, the other way was to say this dot badge equals 5. This is this set badge. And this will automatically launch the beforeSet badge, which is basically good to evaluate, is this valid? Validate. And in case something wrong was set, you could either say set the default value or make sure this is always a string, and you could parse it, something like that. If you want to update your DOM, you will always go for the afterSet badge. And this is exactly what I'm doing in here. So we were talking about the getter and setter. This one, what could that be? So if you read it from the new perspective, this is this get vDom. So I'm getting the vDom, and from within the vDom, I'm trying to get third child, zero base, the third child, which is my new badge element. And for this one, I would like to set the HTML with a value, which we just set in here. So if I'm increasing the number, I always want to set the new value as HTML. if the value which we receive is null, then I want to remove it from the DOM. This is very, very important to understand, that if you remove it from the DOM, you are not removing it from the vDom. Otherwise, let's say it would remove it from the vDom, this wouldn't make sense. After the first time when we get null, it would vanish, and then this wouldn't make sense any longer. Therefore, the vDom always contains those hidden items, but the DOM might not. Shall we look? Okay, in here, let's go for 9 and then try to inspect this item in here. You can see span new button element, badge element, which has the node vnode 9. Now I click in here and it's gone. It's no longer part of the DOM. So now I go in here again, click it, and we see it again. And it has the same ID, just gone from the DOM, but inside the vDom, everything stays the same. So that's what we do with removeDom. Initially, what we would do in here is to say removeDom true, because initially it could be null at the beginning, and therefore it's good to hide it from the beginning. And as soon as we set a valid value in here, we want to set removeDom to false. In here we said this get vDom, and now down here we are saying this set vDom. And this set vDom means we received the vDom from here. Because this is an object, whatever we do to the object, and even if we just get a sub part of the object and change values in there, the full object will be changed. So whatever happens to badge is already inside our vDom object. Now we changed some things from the vDom, and it might be that we changed a lot of different things. We changed this button. At the same time, we changed something else. And nothing happened yet to the DOM. And now we are going for the bulk update. And this is really cool. If you would always, by changing things in here, update the DOM, then for each item which you change, you would run a DOM update. But now, by saying this vDom, this set vDom equals to vDom, this set vDom out of the box runs an update on the DOM. Never before you run this line, anything will happen to the DOM. So as soon as you run this command, now the result of this is that we are getting our number up here, and we can increase the number. Whenever I press here, we are calling in here this badge equals this badge plus 1. So this get badge plus 1 equals will be set to this set badge, and this set badge calls this afterSet badge, and that is updating our DOM. And that's how you interpret the different configs. So whenever you see something in your code, beforeGet, beforeSet, afterSet, these are the standard methods that are run on a config. So you never ever want to use beforeGet or afterSet or beforeSet for anything else. Otherwise, you wouldn't understand your code afterwards any longer. So make sure you never ever use beforeGet, beforeSet, and afterSet for anything else. But as soon as you add a new config with an underscore at the end, you'll get these out of the box. And why don't these have underscores? As soon as these are defined by a parent, and if we go into here, you can see that our new button base, the parent of that is new component base, the parent of that is new core base. And whatever is in core base and component base will also be available in button base. So by extending the base button, we get all the configs which are defined in new button base. And for that, we will receive all the items from there in our badge button. And CLS should be definitely in here. Let me just scroll to find it. CLS. So this already is defined. That's why we out of the box can use the logic for this. Okay, I guess that's it for today. I hope you understood a lot. Hope you would like to see more of this. If so, please subscribe, and if possible, leave a comment how you like the session. If there's too much information or too little information, let me know. This is very important for the YouTube algorithm, so please help me by adding a comment and enjoy my new outro, and I see you next week. Bye!